Welcome once again aboard our ship, on a continuous journey toward the essence of truth. Since our journey began, we have been sailing through waves of questions, searching for answers, and moving step by step closer to the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance. In the previous episode, we reflected on the question, what is the religion established by the Creator? Today, we continue our journey across this vast sea to address a new question. Why do we differ over religion? What are the roots of conflict and its effects? This question is not new. The conflict began the moment humans first stood before religion, attempting to understand it, or perhaps challenging it. Let us continue this journey together, for the road ahead is still long, the heart still beats with passion, and the mind remains thirsty for more knowledge. Far away, amidst fertile lands that stretched as far as the eye could see, there was a great farm owned by a wise man referred to as the Great King. The farm was vast, worked by hundreds of farmers and laborers, with every corner bustling with life and activity. The king was generous with everyone, granting them land to cultivate, water to irrigate their crops, and allowing them a portion of the harvest to sustain themselves. However, he asked for one thing in return, that they adhere to the instructions he provided for managing the farm. He sent books with guidelines, and from time to time, a wise man chosen from among them, known as the expert, to assist the workers and farmers resolve their problems and convey the king's words to them. The first expert was warmly welcomed by the workers and farmers. The expert carried the great king's book and sat with everyone to read it to them, then clarified its contents. They were happy because the book answered their questions and showed them how they could live in the farm with happiness and success. But over time, a problem arose. One of the farmers, a man named Salim, showed great interest in the expert's words. But he wasn't doing so out of a desire to learn. Rather, he wanted to become important. Salim noticed that the expert was highly respected by the farmers, so he decided to become his assistant. The expert hadn't asked for this, nor had the great king appointed him. But Salim began behaving as if he knew everything about the farm. Salim started giving orders and instructions to the farmers, claiming to convey the king's wishes. But soon, the farmers noticed his words were different. Salim was adding things that weren't in the book, making up rules himself. Over time, the farmers began to doubt Salim. They would say to one another, "Is this really what the king wants? Why doesn't he read the book to us like the first expert did?" But Salim was clever, keeping the book away, claiming it was too complicated. At the same time, another man emerged among the workers. This man was named Maher, and he initially worked as a simple laborer. But suddenly, Maher began acting as if he were a major authority on the farm. Maher wasn't interested in the book or the king's words. He believed the workers needed a strong figure to lead them. He gathered some workers and gave them money to join him, promising them more if he could take control of the farm. Maher began using force and violence. He forced the workers to labor for long hours and constantly yelled at them, "If you don't work hard, the great king will be angry with you. You are lazy. The farm will collapse because of you." The workers were afraid of Maher and began to hate the great king. They started doubting his justice and rejecting his teachings and orders. The problems in the farm began to worsen. The farmers, who initially loved the owner of the farm and trusted his books, started feeling alienated. They began to say, "If this is what the great king wants, why do we suffer so much in this farm? Why is the book filled with teachings that make our lives harder?" But the problem wasn't in the book. It was in how Salim and Maher conveyed it to the people. Over time, some of the workers began talking about rebellion. They said, "Why do we even need the great king? We are the ones working here, planting the land and harvesting the crops. We will no longer listen to any expert sent by the king. We will live as we want." However, other farmers and workers said, "Wait, is the problem with the king, or is it with those who claim to represent him? Remember, when the first expert was here, we were happy. The problem began with Salim and Maher, not with the king or his books. Days passed, and the workers and farmers gathered in the farm's central yard. There was a clear division among them. Some were angry and wanted to revolt, while others called for calm and reflection. At that moment, a farmer named Omar appeared. He was one of those who had studied the book carefully. He carried the book, his face full of wisdom and calmness. He looked at everyone and said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you angry?" Voices began to rise. "Who are you? We don't want to hear anything about the book. We don't understand anything in it. The king's book is full of meaningless orders." Salim and Maher ruined everything. Omar smiled and said, "Have you read the king's book yourselves? Or have you relied on what others told you?" Silence fell. The farmers and workers looked at each other. No one dared to answer. Omar then began explaining to the farmers and workers the importance of reading the king's book themselves. He assured them that the solution to all their problems lay within the pages of this book. He said, "Everything you need is in this final book. And remember, the owner of the farm will return at a time no one knows, and he will hold everyone accountable for their actions." The book remained in the farm, open to anyone who wanted to read it, but it required effort and patience to understand it. It was filled with precise instructions, stories that carried lessons, and rules that organized everyone's life on the farm. However, most workers and farmers preferred the easy way out. "We don't have time to read this book," they would say. "The work in the fields is hard and exhausting, and it's impossible to find time to read a book that requires this much focus." And so, the people returned to their old habits. Everyone took their information about the book and the king's will from those who claimed they understood it, but those individuals weren't qualified. They interpreted the book according to their own whims, and chaos began creeping into the farm. Months passed, then years, and the king did not appear. Some said, "Maybe he'll never return." Others said, "Let's do whatever we want. There's no one watching us anymore." As people felt that the king's return wasn't imminent, some began oppressing others. The stronger farmers started taking over the weaker fields. The stronger workers began imposing taxes on the others. Small groups emerged, controlling parts of the farm and imposing their own laws on the people. All this led to more chaos and injustice. Everyone lived in fear, and no one felt safe anymore. Over time, the small problems turned into major conflicts. The farmers, who worked the land, began feeling they were bearing more of the burden than the workers. They would say, "We are the ones who plant and harvest, while the workers only gather the crops. Why do they get an equal share to us?" The workers, on the other hand, felt injustice too. They would say, "We are the ones who work under the scorching sun to transport the crops, and we are the ones who build the fences and protect the farm. Why do the farmers treat us as if we are less than them?" These feelings began to turn into hostility. At first, the quarrels were just angry words, but they soon escalated into fights and then into violent clashes. Even among the farmers themselves, division began to arise. Some believed that the work should be shared equally, while others thought that everyone had the right to keep what they produce for themselves. "Why should I share my harvest with someone who doesn't work as hard as I do?" said one farmer. "But the farm will only prosper if we work together," argued another. But this debate did not remain a debate for long. It quickly turned into disputes over fields and tools, and every farmer began guarding their land as if it were their private property. As for the workers, they fell into complete disarray. Some refused to work under others' supervision, and among them emerged individuals who forced themselves as leaders using strength. "I work more than everyone else, so I have the right to decide how the wages are divided," said one of them. "But we all work together, and no one has the right to control us." These disagreements caused work on the farm to halt on many occasions. Fields were neglected, and crops spoiled before they could be harvested. As the conflicts persisted, The farm began to collapse bit by bit. The fields that were once green and fruitful became barren because no one tended to them as they should. The equipment began to break down because the workers didn't cooperate to repair them. The crops that were harvested with difficulty were stolen or lost because everyone was too busy with their conflicts. The farm's economy completely collapsed. There was no longer a system to distribute the crops, and everyone took what they could by force or stole from others. One day, an old man sat in a corner of the farm, looking at the barren fields and the exhausted workers. This man had lived on the farm since its early days. He remembered how the fields used to be green and how people used to work together in peace. A young man approached him and asked, "Uncle, why did all this happen? Why has our life become like this?" The old man sighed and said, "We ruined everything with our own hands. The great king was never unjust to us. He gave us everything we needed. However, he asked us to read his books, understand them, and live according to his instructions. But we didn't. We relied on people who were not trustworthy, and we abandoned the book. Now we live in this ruin because we didn't have patience and didn't make the effort to understand the will of the farm's owner." Then he added with a sorrowful tone, "But the king will return. He said he would, and I'm sure he will. When he returns, he will hold everyone accountable for their actions. I just hope we can find a way to fix what we've ruined before that day comes." The young man said, "But why didn't we pay attention? Why didn't we try to understand the book ourselves?" The old man replied, "Because, my boy, we love the easy way out. The book required patience, and we didn't have that patience. It required minds that think, and we preferred to listen to others instead of thinking for ourselves. And so, when Salim came with his additions, we accepted him. And when Maher came with his violence, we feared him and followed him. We didn't return to the book to verify their words, and we let the farm go down the path of ruin." He looked at the dry land that was once green and fruitful. His face was full of wrinkles that carried the stories of time. He seemed to carry within him all the tales of the farm, from its days of prosperity to its downfall. "My boy, what happened here in the farm is but a reflection of what happens in our lives as humans. It is a small representation of the world we live in. This farm is a symbol of the life that the Creator has given us. He gave us everything: fertile land, water, the sun, and even his messages that explain to us how to live in peace and justice. But he didn't force us to do anything. He gave us the freedom to choose and sent us messengers and prophets to teach us and guide us to the right path. But we, my boy, neglected knowledge and inquiry. We didn't have the patience to read and understand the heavenly books, and we sought the easy way out. We relied on people who weren't qualified. And when religion is misapplied, just as happened with the great king's book here, it becomes a source of conflict instead of peace." The young man said, "But uncle, why do we differ over religion?" The old man replied, "My boy, human conflict always stems from misunderstanding. Philosophers overuse their minds in a wrong way. Instead of contemplating what their senses could perceive, they delve into what lies beyond their comprehension. This contradicts reason and logic, for a sound mind knows its limits and recognizes its inability to grasp everything. For example, philosophers delved into the unseen, attempting to explain matters beyond human comprehension, such as the origin of the universe and the nature of the Creator, without possessing rational or sensory evidence. Among the prominent examples of denying revelation using reason is the stance of the philosopher David Hume. Hume based his critique of revelation and miracles on principles of empirical and logical reasoning. He argued that reports of miracles lack a reliable source and added that historical experiences prove that claims of revelation or miracles are often the result of superstition or a desire to deceive others. Hume's ideas presumed the authority of human reason to judge matters beyond its capacity, even though reason does not inherently deny the possibility of revelation or miracles, especially when there is evidence to prove their authenticity. If we encounter an honest transmission supported by consistent testimonies and strong evidence, reason accepts the validity of miracles and revelation. The existence of deceit or superstition in some reports does not prove that all such reports are false. Moreover, Hume himself relied in his life and philosophy on believing in things that cannot be directly perceived by the senses, such as causality, the existence of the external world, natural laws, and historical events. This demonstrates that belief in what transcends the senses is both natural and necessary for the human mind. Denying revelation or the unseen solely because it lies beyond sensory perception is an inconsistent stance, even with his own intellectual methodology. The old man then added, "As humans, we cannot know everything. There are matters that fall outside the scope of our perception. For example, during our sleep, events occur around us that we know nothing about, and upon awakening, we need someone to inform us of what happened." This shows that the human mind recognizes its limitations and acknowledges its inability to comprehend all the mysteries of existence. Therefore, the Creator gave us revelation as a guide and messengers to help us understand what our limited intellects cannot grasp. There are those who rejected everything and did not even attempt to engage their minds. They fled from the legacy of the past and the burden of searching for truth, preferring instead to drown in their desires and the trivialities of life, as if trying to forget that they exist at all. Some people fled from confronting the great existential questions, such as, who is the Creator? Why did He create us? What does He want from us? They did so by turning to meditation or philosophies that avoid delving into the truth of the Creator, focusing instead on psychological comfort or liberation from suffering. One of the most prominent examples of this is Buddhism, which centers on the concept of nirvana as the ultimate goal, a state of liberation from suffering and desires, without acknowledging the existence of a creator or seeking to understand his will. In Buddhist texts, there are clear indications of ignoring questions related to the Creator, as Buddha himself is quoted as saying, "Do not waste your time on questions that do not lead to the cessation of suffering. Instead, focus on the path that leads to liberation." This stance implicitly denies the divine scriptures by rejecting the necessity of the Creator and His message, reducing existence to merely seeking psychological comfort while ignoring the true purpose of creation. A sound mind realizes that fleeing from existential questions does not solve them, and that true comfort comes from understanding the purpose of life and adhering to the Creator's commands, not by simply ignoring reality or seeking temporary solutions. There are also those who found in religion an opportunity for exploitation and control, turning it into a tool of dominance, using it to justify their greed or to restrict others. One of the most prominent examples of using religion for control is what some members of the church did in medieval Europe, where they exploited religion to impose their authority on people through indulgences, which they claimed guaranteed the forgiveness of sins in exchange for money. This practice had no basis in the original teachings of Christianity, but was merely a means to achieve material and political ambitions. From a rational perspective, this behavior contradicts the essence of religion, which calls for justice and sincerity in worship. Exploiting religion for personal gain or to oppress others strips it of its spiritual meaning and turns it into a tool of injustice rather than a path to guidance. A sound mind rejects such practices because divine revelation cannot be used to justify oppression or personal whims. It is a noble message aiming to establish justice and reform souls. There are also those who blindly followed inherited traditions without thinking, content with the beliefs and ready-made answers passed down to them. They neither asked questions nor sought to verify what they were told, as if fearing that questioning might shake their certainty. Such people followed their tribes or groups blindly, without attempting to confirm their words or even to connect with the Creator and turn to Him directly. Then there are those who delved into superstitions and myths, believing anything they heard in an attempt to explain the universe and existence through mysterious stories without evidence. Yet, they found comfort in these tales as a way to escape the burden of ambiguity. There are many contemporary examples of this phenomenon, where some individuals resort to believing in conspiracy theories or mysterious narratives that lack scientific evidence, but provide them with comfort or explanations for what seems unclear or complex in their lives. For instance, some believe that astrology and horoscopes can determine a person's destiny or completely explain their personality. While these beliefs lack any scientific basis, many find psychological comfort and daily guidance in them. Similarly, others believe in spiritual stories, such as the existence of hidden energies that influence the universe or supernatural forces that can be summoned through specific rituals. These ideas are prevalent in some modern cultures and are sometimes used as a way to escape the complexities of reality. In all these examples, we see that humans tend to believe in what provides them with psychological comfort or helps them make sense of ambiguity, even if it comes at the expense of scientific truth or logic. There are also those who tried to balance reason and faith, tradition and contemplation, in search of the truth that could explain this great mystery in a way that aligns with both nature and intellect. These individuals, my son, are few. The young man said, "But, uncle, why do some people hate religion? Isn't religion a good thing?" The old man smiled sadly and said, "My son, religion in its essence is something great. But the problem is not with religion itself. The problem lies in the way it is applied. Let me explain to you. Some people want to live without any restrictions or rules governing their actions. Religion is a moral and behavioral framework that regulates human life, and some may feel that it conflicts with their desire for absolute freedom. This desire may stem from the natural human inclination to rebel against constraints and a misunderstanding of freedom. Often, hatred of religion arises from negative personal experiences, such as being subjected to violence or injustice in the name of religion, or feeling isolated due to religious obligations imposed by family or society. These experiences leave a bad impression of religion in the minds of some, even though such practices do not reflect the true essence of religion. Some people interpret religion in their own way, adding things to it that were never part of it, and removing what does not suit them. For example, Salim, who imposes his interpretations on others, claiming that they come from scholars who are more knowledgeable than us and cannot be wrong, even when we present clear evidence. This makes people hate religion, as they see it as a restriction on their freedom and a source of resentment, rather than a means of comfort and justice. Then there are others, like Maher, who claim to act in the name of religion, but, in reality, practice hypocrisy. They speak of justice, but act unjustly. They preach mercy, but are harsh. They follow some religious commands, but neglect others, and then speak in the name of religion, presenting a deceptive appearance where their inner reality contradicts their outward image. This contradiction drives people away from religion. There are examples in Islamic history that show how some leaders or groups exploited religion to achieve political or personal interests. One of the most famous examples is the Khawarij, a group that emerged during the time of Caliph Ali ibn Abi Talib. May Allah be pleased with him. They raised the slogan, "Judgment belongs only to Allah," a religious slogan that may appear, on the surface, to glorify religion. However, they used it as a tool to justify their rebellion against the legitimate caliph and to fight against Muslims, leading to division within the community and bloodshed. Ali ibn Abi Talib responded to their slogan by saying, "A word of truth used to serve falsehood," highlighting that their use of religion was a cover to achieve political goals, such as imposing their rule and enforcing their own interpretation of Islam. Some groups prevent people from asking questions or thinking. They tell them, Don't ask, don't think, just do what we tell you. But human nature loves to ask and understand. When people are prevented from doing so, they feel that religion restricts them, and they turn away from it. One famous example is that of William Tyndale, who faced severe persecution from the Catholic Church in the 16th century when he translated the Bible into English. Prior to that, the Bible was only available in Latin, a language the common people did not understand, which allowed priests to monopolize the interpretation of scriptures. The priests claimed that the Bible was too difficult to understand, and that the common people could not interpret it themselves, insisting that it should remain in the hands of clergy alone. This claim was a means of controlling people's minds and preventing them from questioning or directly accessing religious texts. When Tyndale translated the Bible, one of the church leaders said, "It is better for people to remain in the darkness of ignorance than to understand the Bible in their own language." Logically, this behavior reveals the priest's fear of losing their authority if people understood religion directly. The truth is that religion should be accessible and understandable to everyone, as Allah says in the Quran. And we have certainly made the Quran easy for remembrance, so is there any who will remember? Claiming that scriptures are too difficult to understand is an attempt to hide the truth and keep people under control, which contradicts both sound reason and true religion. Sometimes, religion is used as a tool for political or social control. It becomes a means for leaders to subjugate people, rather than a means to liberate them. This makes people see religion as a tool of oppression, rather than as a means for justice and freedom. At times, acts of violence are committed in the name of religion. Wars are waged, innocents are killed, and all of it is justified in the name of religion. But the truth is that religion is innocent of these acts. They are the mistakes of humans, yet they are attributed to religion, causing people to hate it. One of the most famous examples of exploiting religion for personal or political gain is the Crusades, which occurred between the 11th and 13th centuries. These wars, declared to liberate the Holy Lands from Muslims, were in essence a mixture of religious, political, and economic motives. During the Fourth Crusade, instead of heading to Jerusalem, the Crusaders turned their campaign toward Constantinople, the capital of the Christian Byzantine Empire, and looted it. One Byzantine historian, Nicetas Choniates, wrote about this event. They came under the banner of the cross, but they were thieves and criminals. They made no distinction between churches and homes, taking everything they could carry. This event exposes the complete deviation from the religious motive of the campaign, as it turned into the plundering of the wealth of a fellow Christian city. The Crusades clearly show how religion, when used as a tool for power and control, can stray entirely from its moral and spiritual message, becoming a means to achieve worldly goals at the expense of the values it calls for. In certain historical periods, there was a clash between religion and science or free thought, where some religious institutions clung to traditional interpretations of the world and rejected scientific discoveries or new ideas. This conflict led some to view religion as an obstacle to progress or as being incompatible with reason. Galilei is one of the most prominent scientists who faced conflict with the religious institution. He supported the Copernican theory, which stated that the Earth revolves around the Sun, the heliocentric model, contradicting the prevailing church doctrine of the time, which was based on a literal interpretation of the Bible that claimed the Earth was stationary and the center of the universe. In 1633, the Catholic Inquisition forced Galileo to recant his scientific views under the threat of imprisonment or execution, placing him under house arrest for the remainder of his life. This case became a symbol of the conflict between science and religion. In that era, many saw religion as a repressive authority that hindered freedom of thought and scientific progress. This perspective led to the separation of religion from public life, where people relied solely on reason as the source of knowledge and guidance for behavior, contributing to the emergence of relative moral systems based on human interests rather than fixed values. Despite all these reasons, hatred of religion does not always mean a rejection of the moral or spiritual principles it advocates. Often, the rejection is directed toward incorrect applications or distorted understandings of religion. The solution lies in returning to the true essence of religion, which calls for balance between reason and faith and achieves moral and spiritual values in their purest form. The young man, appearing sad, said, "But uncle, what is the result of all this? What happens when people neglect or reject religion?" The old man replied, "The result is what you see before you now: chaos. When we abandoned the book, everyone began interpreting things according to their own desires. Conflicts arose among us because we no longer adhered to clear rules. Some of us oppressed others because we forgot the justice commanded by the Creator. My son, religion is not a restriction, but it is also not a game. It is a fair system for life, but it requires deep understanding and proper application. When people misapply religion or reject it entirely, they lose their compass. They become aimless, and their lives turn into constant conflict, as you see here on this farm." The young man said, "But uncle, the Creator no longer sends us messengers. Has he abandoned us forever?" The old man shook his head and said, "No, my son, the Creator has not abandoned us. He told us that he will meet us on a near day, but he did not specify when. The Creator wanted us to always be prepared, to work diligently, to reform ourselves before we meet him. But we did not do that. Time passed, and we began to believe that this day would never come. So, we oppressed one another, neglected knowledge, and forgot the book." The young man sat beside the old man, silent for a moment, reflecting on the words he had just heard. What the old man said was profound and moving, yet within him there was still something unclear, something he wanted to express. After a moment of hesitation, he turned to the old man and said, "Uncle, I understand your words, and I know that the problem is not with the book itself but with us. But don't you think that what the book demands conflicts with our human nature? I mean, we love freedom, we love to do what we like. Why must we be bound by the teachings of the book? Isn't this the reason why people hate what the Creator has sent? Because they feel it restricts them and asks them to abandon their nature." The old man smiled calmly, as if the question did not surprise him. He looked up at the sky, then back at the young man, and said, "Chaos is the result of absolute freedom. If we are left without rules to organize us, we destroy each other without even realizing it." And that is what happened here on the farm. When we abandoned the teachings of the farm's owner and decided that everyone could do whatever they wanted, it led us to this chaos. The young man stood up and looked around at the farm. He saw barren land, neglected fields, and people living in constant conflict. He said to the old man, "It is not easy for the soul to endure this. Change, patience, and knowledge are needed. We have taken a step closer to the truth, and on the horizon emerges a question that may lead us to know the Creator. Is there a conflict between religion and human nature?" In the next episode, inshallah, we will delve into this question together and search for the answer. We will try to uncover together. Can the Creator be known as he truly is through multiple paths, or has he defined a specific path that, if followed, will lead us to him? In the next episode, inshallah, we will delve into this question together and search for the answer. Your journey to the truth is an ongoing one. It may seem challenging and long, but it is worth every effort made to reach the desired goal. It is a journey that requires patience, reflection, and deep thought, but it ultimately holds the most beautiful meanings and profound values. Stay with us, for the answer to this question may be a new key to a deeper understanding of our lives and purposes. The horizon is still vast before us, and the journey has not yet ended. I ask Allah to make us among those who learn and act upon what they have learned, so that our knowledge becomes a light that illuminates our path in this world and the hereafter. Peace be upon you, and the mercy and blessings of Allah.